The New Mexico desert has always swallowed secrets. Its heat scorches the earth by day, and its silence at night feels endless. Out here, a body can vanish. Out here, bones can turn to dust before anyone even notices a person is gone. On March 22nd, 1999, the desert gave up one of its secrets. In the small town of Truth or Consequences, a woman sprinted down the dirt road, barefoot, bloodied, and completely naked. Her wrists were raw, her ankles bruised. Around her neck was a heavy iron slave collar, locked tight with a chain still dangling from it. She screamed for help, banging on the door of the first home she could find. The family inside opened the door to a nightmare, a woman in chains, terrified and begging for her life. Her name was Cynthia Vigil, and her story would uncover one of the most disturbing crimes in American history. The man who had chained Cynthia in the desert was David Parker Ray. On the surface, Ray seemed ordinary, a 59-year-old mechanic who worked for the State Park Service at Elephant Butte Lake. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, maybe a little withdrawn. He lived in a modest trailer. He fixed boats. He waved hello at the gas station. But behind the locked doors of that trailer, he had built something monstrous. It was soundproofed, fortified. Inside, the walls were lined with torture instruments. There were whips and clamps, chains bolted to the ceiling, hooks and pulleys, medical scalpels laid out like surgical tools. And in the center, a gynecologist's chair, its leather straps worn from use, bolted firmly to the floor. Above it, a mirror, so victims were forced to watch what was being done to them. But the most chilling item in that room wasn't a weapon. It was a cassette tape. On it was a recording, Ray's own voice, calm and detached, a message he played to women as they woke up, chained and disoriented. "Hello there, bitch," the tape begins. "You're probably thinking this is a dream. It's not. You're here to be used. From now on, you'll be kept naked and chained like the dog that you are. You're going to be raped in every way I can think of, and in ways you can't imagine. It's going to be painful. It's going to be terrifying, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." This was not a man improvising violence. This was a man following a script. David Parker Ray's obsession with sadism began early. He grew up in a broken home. His father was violent, his mother absent. As a teenager, Ray was shy, socially awkward, unable to connect with girls his age. Instead, he buried himself in fantasies. In his notebooks, he sketched women tied to racks, drawn in cages, restrained with whips and chains. These weren't crude doodles. They were detailed blueprints. The beginnings of what would one day become the toy box. Over the decades, those fantasies grew. He joined sadomasochistic groups, explored bondage clubs, and collected pornography focused on torture and domination. But Ray wasn't satisfied with fantasy. He wanted control in reality. By the 1880s and 90s, he was building the chamber he'd imagined since boyhood. Piece by piece, tool by tool, he engineered his perfect dungeon. And he didn't work alone. His daughter, Glenda Jessie Ray, helped. For years, women disappeared around Elephant Butte Lake. Some families reported daughters or sisters who never came home. Others simply vanished into the desert without a trace. Those who escaped alive often carried only broken memories, flashes of restraints, blinding lights, surgical instruments. Ray was methodical. He drugged his victims with powerful sedatives like sodium pentothal and phenobarbital, enough to keep them conscious but pliable, enough to blur their memories. He called his victims packages. To him, they weren't people, they were objects. The disappearances didn't attract much attention. Many of the victims were sex workers or women with histories of drug use, people society too often dismissed. Even when women reported strange, hazy experiences of being chained and assaulted, police dismissed them as unreliable. And so, Ray continued, for decades. On March 22, 1999, everything changed. Cynthia Vigil was working the streets in Albuquerque when she was approached by Cindy Hendy. Hendy offered drugs and safety, coaxing Cynthia into Ray's RV. The door locked behind her, and Cynthia realized too late that she had been trapped. She was transported to the toy box, chained, stripped, forced to listen to the tape. For 3 days, she was tortured. Ray used whips, shock devices, medical tools. Hendy watched, sometimes assisting, sometimes laughing. But Cynthia never gave up. On the 3rd day, Hendy made a mistake. She left the keys unattended. Cynthia seized her chance. She lunged at Hendy, smashing a lamp across her head. Hendy collapsed, blood streaming down her face. Cynthia grabbed the keys, unlocked her chains, and ripped the collar free from the wall. She bolted through the door, half naked, collar still clanging around her neck. She ran until she found a home. She screamed until someone opened the door. Her escape ended David Parker Ray's reign of terror. When police raided Ray's trailer, even hardened investigators froze at what they saw. The walls covered in tools of torture, the chair bolted to the floor, the cameras, the tape, the diary. The diary alone was a horror story. Hundreds of pages where Ray described abductions, assaults, experiments. He wrote in clinical detail, cataloging his victims, recording dates and methods. But there were no names and no bodies. Authorities searched Elephant Butte Lake for remains, convinced that Ray had dumped his victims there. Divers combed the water. Cadaver dogs swept the shorelines. Nothing was found. Without bodies, proving murder would be difficult. But prosecutors had Cynthia. They had the tape, and they had the toy box itself. Ray was arrested, along with Cindy Hendy and his daughter, Jessie. The trial that followed horrified the public. Cynthia Vigil took the stand, describing her escape in chilling detail. Other women came forward, telling fragments of their own experiences in the toy box. Some broke down mid-testimony, unable to continue. Hendy, desperate for leniency, turned on Ray. She described how she had helped him lure women, how she had watched him. The trial that followed was exhaustive. Survivors described their experiences in vivid detail, creating a narrative of horror and methodical cruelty. Hendy and Jessie corroborated testimonies, confirming their roles in maintaining the toy box. Evidence included photographs, diaries, instruments, and cassette tapes, documenting a system of torture and control refined over decades. Ray's calm demeanor in court, his meticulous documentation, and lack of remorse underscored the depth of his pathology. The prosecution depicted a predator who had transformed decades of obsession into systematic, ritualized terror.
Ray was sentenced to multiple decades in prison, ensuring he would never harm another victim. Hendy received a reduced sentence for cooperation, and Jesse was similarly sentenced. Ray died in 2002, leaving unanswered questions about the full scope of his crimes and countless unidentified victims. Even decades later, the desert around Elephant Butte remains silent and indifferent, yet the toy box's legacy endures. Survivors' courage, law enforcement diligence, and the psychological study of Ray's methods serve as reminders of the extremes of human cruelty. The toy box is gone, but its imprint remains, a chilling testament to a man who lived among ordinary people while orchestrating extraordinary terror.
If you enjoyed today's video, we thank you very much. Please like and subscribe to Rare Breed Chronicles. And let's dive into another story that defies the ordinary.